Hi, and welcome to the HR Insider. Have you ever wished you could know what was going on in your supervisor's mind when you walk in 5 minutes late and you try to rush past their door and hope that they didn't see you? Or have you ever wondered why you and your supervisor really shouldn't hang outside of work and why that stigma exists? Well, today we are speaking with Amara Schook with Collaborate Training and Consulting Services, and she will give us a little insight on how to handle employees from a supervisor perspective. Thank you for joining us today, Amara.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. We're going to do something a little different, a little fun. We're going to do an icebreaker to kind of get to know you better. So in 30 seconds, we're going to ask just some random questions I'm going to pull out of this bowl, and we'll see how many you can answer in 30 seconds. Okay?
Let's go for it.
Some of them are funny, some of them are interesting, and you're going to have to think on your feet. Okay? Here we go. Getting to know Amara in 30 seconds. What fictional place would you most like to go?
Fictional place, Atlantis.
Okay. Ooh, nice. What is your least favorite animal?
Least favorite animal? I don't have least favorite animals. Insects, but those are animals, so.
Anything with like more than 4 legs.
Yeah.
Out. Okay. If you could pick a song to be your personal theme song, what would it be?
Blame It on the Rain.
Okay. What is the most annoying habit that other people have? That's it.
Oh, man. Okay. Oh, do I get to answer that one?
Yeah.
Go ahead. The most annoying habit that other people have, interrupting each other when they talk.
Yeah. A lot of people do that.
It does happen
without
often.
that they just.
Mm-hmm. But now you're going to be super self-conscious about that our entire interview, so
you're right.
I apologize for that one.
All right. Well, that was fun. Wish we could keep going because there's lots of fun and interesting questions to get to know people. What's a good icebreaker? This is not on our script, but as we were talking before the show, you were talking about that you are the executive director of Project Outreach. And
yes,
I found that really, really interesting, and I want to know more about it, and I want our audience to know more about it. So tell us about Project Outreach and your role, and what do you do? What is executive director? And Alisha was mentioning that you do a lot of that virtually,
yes.
But you have a team and all that. So just tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, well, so Project Outreach is actually a very small organization, one of the smallest nonprofits in the state, believe it or not. And we provide respite care to children with disabilities and their siblings in the Norman, Cleveland County area. And so essentially, we don't have a designated space. And so we have to labor for locations to have our respite care sessions. And so we have in between 5 and 25 kids that are attending each session that we have every single month. And so with that, I have 3 different caregivers that are employed by our organization, and then the rest are all volunteers that are providing the care to these kids on a semi-monthly basis. So, they come twice a month. I'm sorry. So essentially, through that, I'm communicating with these individuals via email, we're texting, so there's a lot of back and forth. And so I'm having to do this. This is a part-time job for me, so I work with my consulting business, and then I do this as well. And so I've been working with them for almost 2 years at this point. And so it's been really exciting, a very unexpected thing that I was able to be a part of. And so we have seen tremendous results as part of that organization.
So it kind of gives a break to the parents caring for the disabled child, and their siblings get to participate too. So
Absolutely.
It's just a fun kind of activities for the kids.
Yeah, and originally Project Outreach started in 1965, back whenever children were not able to go to the public school system because they had a disability. Well, whenever Norman started to be able to have kids in the schools with disabilities, there wasn't really necessarily a need to have our organization continue at that level. And so we participate so that parents can go and do things like go and get groceries, have just a break, and then their siblings can attend as well. And so we've actually also partnered with a group called SIB Shops, which comes in and also works with the kids who don't have any disabilities so that they have the opportunity to be a rock star in their own environment as well. Because whenever you have a child with disabilities, sometimes so much attention and focus is on that kid at home. And so they have a dedicated space as well at one of the sessions each month. So it's a really neat organization. And it's also a dedication. My brother had a disability, and he passed away while working to gain entrance into the Special Olympics whenever I was a child. And so this is a way for me to give back to him as well.
Wonderful. Well, that's awesome. You're amazing. So if you want to learn more about volunteering for Project Outreach or more about it, we'll have Amara's contact information too. So what we really are here to talk about is your role as a supervisor. And I guess where we can start is how you came into human resources, how that door opened. Have you always wanted to do that? Your kind of journey towards that, and then where you are now on your HR journey. Tell us about that.
So actually, I've been in leadership for 16 years. I know it's a surprise. I look so young, right?
You do.
So I've actually been a manager since I was 18 years old. And so I continued to promote and promote and promote. And so one of the things that was important to me was that I spent time developing people. And so I had to know how to do the job well first. And so I don't have a degree in human resources, but I do have a graduate certificate in human resources, which only helped to validate what I was doing, which was nice because it's like, oh, am I doing all the right things? And so that was something that really did help me say, oh, I am doing some of the right things, and I was able to contribute to my classes and being able to do that as well. So I started off in retail management, and then that helped me get through college. And then I moved into universities, and so I worked my way up through universities, all the way up to an enrollment VP position for a small university here in Oklahoma. And then from that, I've been able to branch off into other things. So I've worked in a training capacity, I've worked as a school teacher, so I've been able to be in a variety of different types of environments, and it's lent itself because I've also been able to work in sales, so many different types of things that have helped me in being a better leader and a better manager to the people that I've been able to work with. And some of the things that have really kind of lent itself in helping me manage people is that I'm a relational manager. And so that's something that's important to me is I get to know who my people are, because if you don't know who you're leading, you cannot be effective as a leader. You have to know your people, and that's one of the very first things, because if they don't know how much you care, they're not going to care that much. So know your people, and then from that point, you can start to develop them, and they're going to be able to be responsible contributors to your business from that point forward. And so that's something that was important to me through my leadership journey, and that was just kind of an innate ability. I think that a lot of people don't also realize that in terms of leadership, only about 30% of people have that natural ability, and the rest of us have to be trained on how to do that. Most people can manage something, but in terms of a leadership ability, we just don't have that naturally. So we have to develop that skill and then hone in on, okay, well, what is coachable? What can I coach myself into doing? And so I was able to really develop that through the variety of very intentional tasks that I took through my different opportunities.
And I agree, managing systems and managing a process is very different than leading people. So that's insightful.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's transition a little bit and let's hear some real life examples of how you have led people to making the better choice that they needed to be making. So let's first talk about what was your least favorite moment in supervisor, manager, leadership world, and can you give us a real life example on how you handled that?
So one of the hardest things that I ever had to do, and I've actually written a training on how to do this because I don't see a whole lot, and I've looked for YouTube videos about this, and there's just nothing out there, is taking over a team where they were all my friends first. And oh my goodness gracious, it is the hardest thing you ever have to do because you are transitioning from peer to supervisor, and sometimes in a matter of a day or two. And suddenly it's, wait a minute, I thought this was going to be easy. We were still going to hang out. You are my friend. And it's like, but now I'm your supervisor, and we are all accountable to this mission and this goal. And so that's where it took a whole lot of making the wrong choice first before I was able to do that effectively again. So what I was able to do from that point, after making some mistakes, was first identify boundaries have to be established. So even when you're going for some type of leadership position and you know that you're going to be taking over a team, let the people on that team know, okay, things are going to be different if I get this position, and they're not going to be able to be exactly the same. If you do have people on your team that you know you're going to continue a relationship with, establish the boundary and say, this is work, this is life. we can have a relationship, but it's not going to look the same as it always has, because I can't be the same, because I'm expected to lead you from this point forward, and I cannot be effective moving forward with our relationship as it is. So establishing those boundaries first and foremost, and then having that person be your cheerleader moving forward, because you need people who are your peers, who are also going to spearhead and be a cheerleader moving forward, because if they are not for you, they can be against you, because then you start getting these people who are kind of going and they're collaborating, and suddenly, well, have you seen that person? They're not with us, they're against us, and then you get a negative office environment. You don't want that either. And so you want somebody who's going to be your cheerleader, who's working hard for you on your behalf, who's saying, you know what, Amara's awesome. You know, she did this job with us too. She's not against us. She's here to help us with this goal. So have that person be your cheerleader. Have them working with you, not against you. And then also understand they may talk about you behind your back, and that's okay.
They're going to.
They're
going to.
It's nothing personal. They're mad that the situation has changed, and what do we not like in life? Change. That's why diets are hard. That's why everything is so difficult if we're talking about change, because we have to understand it's just as difficult for them as it is for us. But then also include your team as part of the goals, and not all decision making, but as part of your goals. Let them know your expectations, because that's the other thing that's incredibly important moving forward. When you have those 4 things in place, that makes the recipe for a good situation. Is it going to be perfect? No. But do you have the makings for a good recipe? You absolutely do.
Here I thought it was just wine in a bathtub. Solved all those problems.
No bath salts. But those are some things that I've learned over the years that are really effective, and that is just one of the most difficult things, and nobody tells you how to do it. And employers expect for you to just go out there and do it, and they don't understand why it was so hard for you. And they think back and they're like, well, I was able to take over my team, but they're lying. They weren't able to just go over and take over their team, and it was hard for them too. And a lot of employers don't want to admit that, and managers, because it's difficult. They don't ever want to admit, they don't want you to see any sort of flaw. But that ends up being a flaw in and of itself, because we are flawed as human beings, right? We need to be able to share in that, because that helps promote growth.
And you said you have that in a blog? I'm sorry.
I've written a training for it.
Is that something online that people could read that we could include?
That's something that I sell as part of my services.
You can sell, so they can call you and say, I need this training on how to do that. Okay.
I offer training and coaching for that, because that is so difficult for people to overcome.
And it's probably not an unusual situation. It happens a lot. If someone is promoted, they're going to be supervising their peer group. But I think an advantage of that too is if they can remind the new supervisor, remind that peer group that, hey, I understand you because I've been there
last week.
Yeah, I know what you're dealing with. So let's just, we're a team, and we can help each other be successful. So that's some really good wisdom. You need to hire this lady. And you kind of answered my next question as far as what are some successes that you've had as a supervisor, which you explained some. And I guess we can kind of elaborate on that, is maybe tell us maybe 3 bullet points that you find makes a successful supervisor.
Yeah. So there's a great image that I've been able to find online, and it's basically, I love ancient Egypt. So it's an Egyptian man, it says boss leader, and he's trying to get people to pull, and it shows that there's a boss who's just got a whip, and then there's a leader who's pulling with the team. I never ask an employee to do something that I'm not willing to do myself, because I need to demonstrate that I'm the expert, so that they have solid proof that I can do the job, so that they can attest that I am their leader and that I'm willing to also fight for them. That's something that's incredibly important. You said 3 bullet points for...
It could be more than 3, but at least 3 bullet points that you find are really describe the successful
supervisor. Okay. The second thing is you have to be willing to listen. Okay, so one of the big mistakes that I think we all catch ourselves in as leaders and supervisors is somebody is telling you their problem, and you stop listening 5 words in because you're coming up with a solution. It happens all the time. Okay, then, yep, we're done. Okay, here's the solution. Here's what you need to go do. but really they haven't finished telling you the problem, and probably 18 more words in, there's more information that you need before you can really give a dedicated solution. We need to be responsible listeners. And then the third part is follow-up coaching. And here's a place that people always mess up, because if you are just giving someone like a seminar or pieces of information, but you never follow up with coaching, how on earth do you know that after 21 days they've made a habit? You don't. You're just expecting them to change a behavior, but you've done no follow-up coaching, and then you're angry that they haven't made a change? You can't be. Shame on you. That's something that's incredibly important, that you do that extra follow-up coaching, and so that's something that's important for me as a supervisor, is that I follow up with that person. After 5 days that I've done a training with somebody, all right, what have you done? Tell me how it's working for you. What's not working for you? What do we need to recoach? What are we afraid to ask in training? And then we go over those things. Then, at the 21-day mark, all right, continue to show me what you've done. What have you implemented? What have you not? Because if you're trying to also give too much information all at one time, they're not going to give you everything you need either.
Those are great. Thank you.
I like let's make sure we're applying this to our life. And how are we applying it? That's great. That's great feedback. Well, why don't you take a few minutes and tell us about your consulting services? Since we touched on that, we want to get into that.
So essentially, I do a lot of leadership coaching and training, and so I actually have developed a leadership training program for leaders within. It doesn't matter how large your company is, large or small. I've done training for companies as small as 5 and as large as 150. And so I've done that. I've done blog writing services, and so and then also just general coaching and consulting services on how to expand or increase profitability for your company. I have a friend who has a photography business, and I asked for her to change her line of service, and she completely did, and it's changed her life. So there's
very nice.
There's so many different things that we can talk and consult about. It doesn't just have to be training. There's a lot of different options, and so and pretty reasonable in terms of cost, but in terms of your reward, there's lots of rewards that can happen as a result of that. So I also can do some marketing as well, so I'm familiar with how to produce some of those materials. So I've had to do that with working with a nonprofit. You have to come up with creative strategies. So there's a lot of different options there. So I'm not a one-trick pony. I've got lots and lots of things.
Lots of that.
Yeah.
And you can go there, or they could meet you somewhere. I imagine you kind of go all over the place.
I do. So I can go on site. And one of the things that's important is, again, I want to be competent about the business that you have. And so it's important for me to spend some time getting to know your business. I don't want to just come in after reading your webpage and say, okay, this is what you need to go in and do. It's just not going to work. I need to spend some time really getting to know your people and your business before I can implement a plan or a change of action.
I like that. Hang out to find out how to fix it.
That's right.
Well, that's all the questions I have. Did you have anything else that you want to touch on?
I would really like to know, is there something that you wish an employee, from an employee perspective and from an employer perspective, that you wish you could tell them? You know, the supervisor's sort of wedged in the middle of these two people, and you have to navigate the conflict between the bosses, who may or may never be there, and the employees who, snake by your desk after they're late for 5 minutes. So is there anything you wish you could tell either party or both parties on how to be more successful, that you're like, I shouldn't say that, it's not the best time to say that, but I wish you knew this?
Yeah. So for an employee, if I could give you any sort of advice, I think that the biggest thing is that understand perspective is everything. So if somebody sees you on your phone all of the time, you're on your phone all the time. Even if your boss just happens to be walking by and you are checking an email one time, that is the perspective that they have of you, is that you are somebody who's irresponsible and on your phone all the time. So that's something, just be careful about that. If you are somebody who wants a particular type of promotion, dress for the job that you want, not the one that you have. I know it sounds cliche, but that's something that's incredibly important. If you want to get noticed, do something special. Don't complain. That's one of the things that is If you are a negative person in your office and you are somebody who wants a promotion, you're just never going to get it if you continuously complain. Find a solution first. For an employee, something that was incredibly important, I think, that helped me in consistently moving up in companies was I usually came with 2 or 3 solutions to my supervisor if I had a complaint. So if it's, hey, the coffee maker's not working. Okay, great. I have a solution. We have instant coffee. We have this other machine that could possibly work in the situation. So come with a couple of different solutions, and then they're like, hey, you know what? Amara has some good ideas. You want that, because then they're looking at you next time for a potential promotion. So employers, things that employers should know. Invest in your people. One of the biggest mishaps that I see is that employers try to save a buck by not training or hiring enough in the very beginning. And it ends up costing them so much in the end. So they'll put somebody out on the floor who's not ready. So instead of training somebody for 2 weeks in a position that they really need 2 weeks of training for, they'll give them a day. And then they wonder why they're having so many mistakes, incredibly costly mistakes on the back end. And it's like, okay, well, this person cost us $20,000 in mistakes. If you put them through the 2-week training program as requested, you probably would have avoided the situation. So invest in the training of your people, and that will also help to keep attrition down, because you don't want to have to constantly rehire people over and over and over again. Training is so incredibly important, but I think that we get so caught up on that initial, cost savings, that we end up losing what the long-term goals are. And you want people that are going to stay in their position, who you don't have to constantly retrain in terms of getting a new hire in all the time.
Training saves.
Training saves, and I'm not saying that just because I do training. I'm saying that because I have been in an environment where we have had to constantly rehire over and over and over again, and that was pulling the manager off the floor to go and do the training. That was pulling other dedicated high-level employees off the floor to go and do the training. And so we are not having higher numbers. We were losing sales. There were so many different pieces to that. So if you look, hindsight being 2020, I'm like, we could have gotten another $20,000 in sales. That was a very expensive misjudgment, miscalculation in not doing the training first.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. You've given us some great information, and we will include Amara's contact information in the comments for you. Thank you for joining us on the HR Insider with Alisha and Beth.
Thank you, guys.